playing steel wire, with his only safety measure being the long balancing pole in his hand. Yet, in the next second, he chooses to let go of his hand. What does 421 meters high really mean? The cars on the road look like tiny ants from up here. If he falls, there's virtually no chance of survival. But the man shows no signs of panic. Instead, he seems to be thoroughly enjoying himself. He reaches one hand towards the sky, feeling the wind, feeling the clouds. It's a movie that those afraid of heights might avoid, or one based on a true story. In 1974, French high wire artist Philippe Petit shocked the world by performing a high wire walk between the Twin Towers, the tallest trade center at that time. His act violated over 100 city ordinances, and after the performance, Philippe was immediately taken away by the police. Many couldn't understand, wasn't he afraid of death? Why risk his life for something like this? However, for Philippe, standing on that wire, surrounded by clouds, was truly living.
For me, to walk on the wire, this is life.
It all started when Philippe was 8 years old. The world's top circus troupe came to his town to perform, and Philippe was captivated by the high wire act. Every step of the performer seemed like walking on the edge of a knife, dangerous yet fascinating. A dream took root in his young mind. He decided to try it himself, tying 5 ropes between 2 trees and taking his first steps on the wire. Through years of practice, the number of ropes decreased, and Philippe grew into a spirited young man. To increase the difficulty, he sneaked into the circus one night to challenge a 10-meter high rope. However, he was caught by the circus leader, Rudy, and their acquaintance began running away. Philippe picked up some props and started performing on his own during the escape. Rudy, seeing Philippe's talent, wanted to take him as an apprentice. Still, Philippe was unwilling to work in the circus. He had bigger dreams. Ignoring his parents' objections, Philippe came to Paris alone, aiming to earn some money through street performances. Here, he met Annie, a street singer, and the two developed feelings for each other. In a restaurant, Philippe mimicked walking on a wire using a wine bottle, expressing his dream of walking on a wire between the world's tallest twin towers. For anyone else, Philippe might seem crazy, but Annie admired him, seeing it as a beautiful endeavor. And so, the two fell in love, with Philippe hanging daily on the wire attracting the attention of a young photographer named Louis. After hearing about Philippe's grand plan, Louis decided to join, using photos to document Philippe's feat. As they spoke, the wire under their feet suddenly loosened, and Philippe fell heavily to the ground. If such an incident occurred at over 400 meters high, the consequences would be unthinkable. To walk on the wire, not only did Philippe need to master the techniques, but he also had to figure out how to secure the rope properly. Realizing the magnitude of realizing his dream, Philippe sought guidance from circus leader Rudy, paying for every bit of knowledge he received. In the quiet moments when the circus was empty, Philippe practiced alone on the wire. However, this time, another accident occurred. Refused. He couldn't deceive the audience and didn't want to leave any regrets. After hearing this, Rudy handed Philippe a bag of money, all the tuition fees he had saved up, to help him achieve his dream. The preparations officially began. Philippe had Annie shake the steel wire with all her might so that he could maintain balance even in extreme weather conditions such as a storm. As for how to pass the steel wire between the twin towers, Louis took out a bow and arrow, tied the line to the arrow, and if everything went well, he could shoot it directly to the other tower. The performance had to take place before the building was completed and before the weather turned cold, so Philippe set the date for August 6th. Only 3 months away. To sneak the equipment into the building without being noticed was as difficult as robbing a bank. Philippe had to disguise himself in various professions and infiltrate the building, taking advantage of the times when the goods were delivered and the workers were unloading. However, Philippe accidentally stepped on a nail while collecting information on the rooftop. This added to the already challenging mission. Annie advised him to give up, but Philippe refused, even if he went into battle with an injury, increasing the level of danger. He wanted to complete this task. To ensure the smooth progress of the plan, Philippe brought in several unreliable accomplices. It seemed risky, but there was no time to be picky. He had to thank them for their help.
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! There's something I have to tell you that I have not said before. It's important. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
3 months passed quickly. On the day before the performance, they disguised themselves as workers and sneaked into the building. However, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes, and unexpected events occurred throughout the process. But stumbling and bumbling, they still managed to move the equipment to the rooftop. 3 hours later than planned, some accomplices began shooting arrows on the other side, and with the traction of the fishing line, everyone started to build the steel wire. Suddenly, it slipped, and the long, heavy steel wire fell rapidly. Philippe reacted in time, turned around, tightened the wire clamp, and successfully secured the steel wire. The anti-friction cloth on the railing was smoking due to intense friction. After all the hardships, and with some people deserting midway, Philippe finally completed all the preparations at dawn. He hadn't slept all night, physically and mentally exhausted, but he still had to take the first step into the clouds. What a crazy man, Philippe, the performer. Learn to listen to the melody of the steel wire eyes. To become a master of this, you have to realize that the steel wire eyes alive, and even feel the breath of the steel wire eyes. Once you've caught the rhythm of the steel wire eyes' breathing, you can synchronize your breathing with the steel wire eyes. It's very smooth. Philippe stepped on the steel wire eyes and reached the North Tower. He's done it, but he wasn't satisfied. Looking back the way he came, Philippe had a bold idea. He wanted to do it again, and this time, he'd do more than just walk. Halfway down, Philippe dropped to one knee. The blood from his wound stained the soles of his shoes. He wanted to honor the steel wire eyes. To the city. The crowd on the ground erupts in applause. Philippe gets up and continues toward the south tower. And just then, the police have arrived on the rooftop, trying to persuade Philippe to step off the wire. But Philippe turned around and headed for the north tower again. The most important thing you can't do when you're on a steel wire eyes is to look down. But Philippe knelt face down on the balance beam. At this moment, he didn't feel any fear or hesitation. He felt a calmness he'd never known before. Philippe was having the time of his life. He was watched by the police and the crowd. He did something he'd never done before. He put down his balance pole. He knelt in midair and stretched out his arms. He felt the fascination and danger of the heights. Then he even slept and danced Latin on the steel wire eyes. But just then, a roar went up around him. Because Philippe wouldn't listen, the police had to launch a helicopter to give him a final warning. It seems it's time to put an end to this magnificent show. Philippe put the balance bar around his neck. He walked slowly, like a king, towards the south tower. But with only 3 steps to go, Philippe's foot suddenly trembles. The steel wire eye shakes violently. Is he going to fail again? But in fact, it was just a joke by Philippe. He threw the balance bar and went up to the rooftop.
My name is Philippe Petit. I'm a wire walker.
Show's over.
Come on. For violating over 100 city ordinances, Philippe was arrested on the spot by the police, but the audience was completely captivated by his magnificent performance, and the press was all over the story. Given Philippe's behavior, there were no serious consequences to Philippe's behavior. The judge sentenced him to perform in the trees of Central Park as punishment. In addition, Philippe got a permanent pass to the Twin Towers. He can climb to the top of the towers anytime he wants to recall his feats of strength. Years later, Philippe returned to the Twin Towers. He could still see the steel wire eyes going on and on, just like his love for steel wire eyes walking. It never ends.